You might remember us, the ones in the red shirts.
We can't afford guns being the leading cause of death for children and teens in this country.
Whether you're Republicans or Democrats, you can't look away.
We're not going to shut up until we get the change we deserve.
Thoughts and prayers are no longer enough. We need to take action now.
You didn't get this far by saying you can't. You didn't get this far by just being mediocre. You moms demand action, and that's what we demand.
Welcome to Movement Builders, a show about the people ending gun violence in America. All of us.
I'm Kaylin Ford.
And I'm Nikita McDaniel. And we are so excited to be here with y'all for episode 3 of the show.
Yes, episode 3.
Last episode, we talked about the disproportionate impact of gun violence on Black communities and the decades of advocacy Black organizers bring to this work with Pastor Jackie Jackson. And it was a powerful conversation. So please, check it out if you haven't already. Today, we're going to talk about the way young Black organizers are leading the way in their communities and on their campuses, including at historically Black colleges and universities.
Yes, and Students Demand Action has partnered with HBCU student organizations across the country to help provide opportunities for young Black organizers to develop their leadership skills, share their stories and experiences with gun violence, and get out the vote on their campuses and their communities. And we know that's never been more important because young voters are going to play a pivotal role in this election, particularly young voters of color.
That's right, Kaylin. And one thing that gives me hope is meeting so many of the incredible young organizers who are out there doing this work. Last November, I joined nearly 100 leaders at our first ever Young Black Changemakers Summit in Atlanta.
Wow.
These incredible organizers came together from all across the country to learn from each other, network, build community, and celebrate what it means to be young, Black, and gifted. And our guest today was at that summit and is doing incredible work in his community of Tallahassee, Florida. We are so excited to have with us Gavin Bendross, a member of Students Demand Action National Organizing Board and a recent graduate of Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. So Gavin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. How is everybody doing?
We're good. We're so happy to have you, and thank you for making the time.
Of course.
Gavin, can you just kick us off and tell us a little bit about what brought you to the gun violence prevention movement?
Everything that happened at the Young Black Changemakers Summit was a lot of training and a lot of really interest within other students that had their own entrepreneurships, businesses, and stories. Gun violence being the root topic of everything, it really made me then stand back to life before college, when you have to think about the background that you truly stem from, the experiences that I'd had in my own community, and really being able to now connect and outreach to other students, leaders, and people that have been affected by gun violence.
Wow, yeah. When you said the Black Changemaker Summit, I got goosebumps because that was a very powerful experience. And I was very thankful to share it with you and so many of our Black changemakers across the country. It was really a great experience. Thank you for sharing that.
Tell us a little bit about the work that you've done in the gun violence prevention movement since attending the Young Black Changemakers Summit, and what feelings and inspiration you left that space with.
That was the first time that I'd had an interaction with students on a national level, especially HBCU students. And it felt empowering to know that not necessarily a lot of them were able to stem and capitalize off of just gun violence. It was the fact that there were other avenues of communication that we'd forged, other common factors between us. From there, I was able to have an advocacy day, January 24th, 2024. And I was able to meet with our minority leader and state representative, Fentress Driscoll. There, we had a conversation in the elevator about students giving their feedback towards 2 gun-specific laws. What she'd requested was students provide handwritten letters as feedback so that she would have tangible evidence that not only young people, but the institutional community had viewpoints about legislation. And really, that was the first experience that I'd had in working with the gun violence prevention movement. And what that entailed was going to different classrooms and providing informational PowerPoints about what these two laws are, what you can do to provide your feedback, where that feedback is being spoken, and also what it means to really be affected. Having the students understand that the utilization of your voice is a valued asset in communicating and in that movement, because you get to really speak truly from your experience.
Absolutely. And, one thing we've talked about in our conversations, there's a difference between activism and organizing. One of them really builds this movement long term, and the other is sort of a quick action taken, but then not as much follow up, not as much community building like what you're describing took place at the Young Black Changemaker Summit. So what does the difference between activism and organizing look like to you? And how are you organizing in your community to make change, not just at one advocacy day, but going forward in the future?
Well, to me, to be an organizer, one has to have the traits of an activist. And to be an activist, that means that you're using efforts to promote, impede, or direct an intervention with social, political, and economic reform. Organizing is the strategic placement and utility of different people in power positions or people in general towards a common cause. You have to think about what resources you have in a certain area and how those resources all kind of interact with each other. Activists kind of have the same goal together, but organizing, again, has a bit more form to it, a bit more of a structure. Being able to have multiple different backgrounds facing multifaceted issues towards a common goal puts that activist energy towards something that has a bit more of an impact because, again, it's more controlled.
Yes. And one thing that's powerful about us as a movement is having organizers from all different ages, backgrounds, and communities actually come together with a shared mission. And it was amazing to see our collective power on display at Gun Sense University this year, with so many students present, moms, and also community partners. So how can we keep working together to create true intergenerational change? And also, if you could share with us, how can we learn from young activists like you who are leading the way?
Well, one of the ways that we can do that is by continuing to encourage intergenerational continuity. And that's passing of traits, characteristics, and knowledge from one generation to the other. I love how Every Town for Gun Safety works with Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action, because you literally have that structure set up within the organization. A mother is nothing without a child. That's what makes them a mother. And a child is nothing without their mother or their parent. So being able to think and reflect on GSU, I had the luxury and opportunity of being a trainer. And it was an interesting platform because I didn't expect that the people that you would be training to have so much more experience than you have, but at the same time have the willingness to listen and change and open their perspective to what's going on between different generations, because we may have had different opportunities just because of that generation. I was able to gain my experience purely off of the fact that I was a student in a place where students were wanted. Now, what comes with being a student is the willingness to listen. The fact that that's reflected upon both sides is something that, again, continues to create a healthy relationship between the two organizations. Moms Demand Action was extremely helpful. And in my training at GSU, I had a really great interaction with an amazing crowd of leaders, activists, especially within the state of, I want to say, Ohio, South Carolina.
Oh, yes.
They definitely contributed feedback from what they'd experienced, and they had questions. So that puts you in a parent, child, mother, co-workers situation where you have to be able to ground yourself. And this person is giving me their experience from their background. I'm giving them their experience from my background. And what we were able to create there was compromise. And with that compromise comes new ideas being generated towards new outcomes. So again, the word or phrase that I think we'd have to stick with to continue cultivating that change is intergenerational continuity. It opens us up to multiple avenues because those ideas are endless. Two minds are always greater than one.
Oh my gosh, I'm just over here beaming. Very amazed at your wisdom.
I got goosebumps when you were talking,
yeah.
Gavin. I mean, just the way that you put that is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes, and guess what? I always talk about intergenerational organizing. And as I was listening to you speak, and you spoke of this term of intergenerational continuity, and that's so powerful that I want to start speaking about it just like that and give you that credit. I mean, you just said a lot when you said that, and I think it's important for us to continue to build our relationships and strengthen them, and we learn from each other. One thing I do want to point out that you said that was also striking was about when you were doing the training and able to harness the wisdom of the moms in the room, and also you imparted wisdom. So as a trainer, I always tell people that one of the best skills that you can have is to be able to acknowledge the knowledge in the space or in the training. So you definitely imparted a lot there. I wish I could have been at your training, but I know it was wonderful.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And I definitely would love to give that credit of the vocabulary and vernacular I just used to a man by the name of Frederick Douglass. I genuinely was able to meet Mr. Douglass at the annual Civil Rights Conference this year. And that was a word that he had used in a training and presentation. Afterwards, he had spoken to me and said, "Young man, intergenerational continuity is what fuels the formation of coalitions. And that's something that if we want to continue the work that we've set out for and carved out for this next generation, is going to have to be pertinent that we continue to use." And a coalition is exactly what every town is created. Because again, you have so many different organizations with different focuses in the same goal. And that's just opportunity right there. And I think everything, especially it being grassroots, gives us a lot to grow from.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, this is such a pivotal time in our country. We have the chance to really make history with this election. We have the chance to do something totally different in a lot of ways. And if we look throughout history, from the civil rights movement to the environmental movement, young organizers are the ones who push things forward because they have a wider vista to look at this from and are more willing to try something new. So how can we harness that power of intergenerational change and that intergenerational continuity, particularly at this pivotal moment in our history as we're getting ready for this election in just a couple of months?
I would have to say trust. You have to trust that the youth is listening. You have to trust that the work that we're being tasked with is being handled correctly. And you have to trust that once you pass that baton, that there is actually going to be change made. I feel like one of the largest issues that young people have in speaking to generations above them, one is listening and being able to capitalize off of opportunities, no matter how small. One thing that I feel is learned and can be learned from generations before us is how to humble yourself within being in certain atmospheres and how not to try to do too much with too little, especially when it comes in terms of information. Young people definitely are the paper pushers because in this working world, I'm finding that you must gain experience, and experience is usually entry level, and entry level is usually paperwork. So being able to know what that paperwork represents or what work you're doing has what part you contribute is a large, large piece to that entire puzzle. When everybody knows their role, they're able to use it to the fullest. And when that can be created, especially a line of communication between the two, then there's nothing that can stop us. You need to have advisors and people with wisdom overseeing that youth with all of the energy and the bright ideas in order to make sure that it's not misguided. So there's a very large need for trust.
I think that's so true. folks from our movement, from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all ages, we can always learn more when we come to a space with that humility and that willingness and desire to learn and to be part of change versus coming in and trying to have all the answers ourselves.
Absolutely. Being a servant leader is very important in this work. I always tell people my age. I'm not ashamed to say my age. I'm 48 years old, and I align myself with young people. I'm here to elevate and hold space. And it feels good to hear you say that we have wisdom and that you honor that. It's all about, to me, though, making and creating a space. I trust y'all with the baton. Sometimes y'all got to pull me along, but y'all always do. And that's why I always know that intergenerational piece is key. I have 3 children, or young folks. They're not children anymore. They're growing up. They 17 and 18, and one is about to be 23.
Amazing. And when you started this work, they were babies, right, Nikita?
They were babies. They grew up in this work. My son, Nafir, he interned for Student Demand Action, I think his freshman year in college. He graduated from North Carolina A&T. They grew up in this work. They know gun violence. I do a lot of work around root causes, too, in my community. But our children grew up in this work, and they know how important it is because it does impact all of us. And I have to say, their generation has lost more friends to gun violence than anything I've seen in my life. I graduated in 1994, and guess what? I could tell you a very few people that passed away from gun violence. So this work is very, very, very important.
And Gavin, I think the work that you all are doing as a generation that knows the pain of this firsthand and has grown up this way is so powerful for that reason.
Thank you. I really just think that we have a lot of work carved out for us still. A lot of the time it's difficult to feel that the work that you're doing is not anything not to be proud of. But there's never a moment that I feel that you can sit down and say congratulations to yourself yet. Because again, like I say, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And really, it's an adaptation of being able to understand what work is and how it contributes to a bigger picture.
We know there is a lot of work to do, particularly between now and Election Day, but the movement we've built is ready to meet this moment. And the most important thing we can do right now is to keep doing this work in our communities with the same amount of intention and dedication we have for years. We'll continue honing our organizing skills to bring more folks into this work, and we'll continue diversifying our movement to center the voices of those most impacted by gun violence. And together, we'll continue to build our collective power.
Y'all, I love hearing Gavin speak about the power of intergenerational continuity and that idea that we can learn the most from each other if we come to the table with that humility.
Yes, and I loved hearing, Nikita, how he was able to meet so many other incredible young Black change makers through this movement. We know that Black student organizers are at the forefront of this movement and have such powerful perspective and skills to bring to this work. And so to help support them, we have amazing resources, information about affinity groups, ways to get involved, and more at our Black Students Organizing Hub. You can check it out at studentsdemandaction.org/Black Students Organizing. Again, it's studentsdemandaction.org/Black Students Organizing.
This has been an incredible conversation for us. Now, we want to hear what you think. This podcast is your community. It's our community. Tell us what part of Gavin's message resonated with you. Send us your voice notes to movementbuilders@everytown.org. Include your name and where you're from, and you might hear it on a future episode of Movement Builders.
Yes, and you sent us some of your reflections and ideas and thoughts after listening to our first 2 episodes of the podcast, and we loved hearing them. Here's some of what you had to say.
Hey, Shani, it's me, Kara. I just finished listening to episode 1 of the Movement Builders podcast, and I am so inspired by you and grateful for all the work you have done for years to help end gun violence in this country. Just wanted to let you know it was me. I'm the one who called you back in 2015. I went back and checked, and I called you. And then we met a couple days later at a house party, and a small group of us, we never looked back. So I'm grateful to have been in this fight with you every day and excited to see what you do next.
Hey, Nikita and Kaylin, it's Hillary Whitfield. I just finished listening to the podcast, and I just had to send you a note this way because I thought it was amazing. I was so inspired by the interview. I found myself taking notes about their rapid response plan because I thought it was brilliant. And I want to bring that to my chapters now so that they are ready for the next moment, because as we know, it could be around the next corner. Anyway, I just wanted to congratulate you both, and you guys are awesome.
We've loved hearing from Hillary and Kara, and thank you also to Jenny Olson, Texas data lead, who told us on Mom's Slack. I liked that Shani could empathize with the issue that so many groups are facing right now and gave good, practical solutions that I think will work, making the connection with each person, hearing their story, getting to know them. I liked her idea of calling a person after they table and talking to them and asking them to do a little more next time and gradually working them into a leadership position. And the second one, I liked Pastor Jackie's frank talk. I heard such good real talk in that one and feedback that I feel like white people, including me, need to hear and need to be reminded of from time to time. I like that part where he said, "Don't ask me what books to read," and how he's been forced to navigate life in a white world. That is such great real talk. I'm going to pass this podcast along to my anti-racism group. So keep those voice notes coming. We love to hear from you. And thanks again for listening. I'm Kaylin.
And I'm Nikita. Thank you all for all that you do to save lives. It is working.
See you next time on Movement Builders.
Bye, y'all.